one Chinese team is always sacrificed on the altar of group stage, and it could be JDG. You know, we've seen it happen to Chinese teams in the past.
Can you imagine if Fnatic got slotted into that group
Oh my
next to
God.
G2?
I mean, it would be an amazing group to watch, but it would be hell to experience.
What up, everyone, and welcome back to Recall, a bi-weekly competitive global League of Legends show. I feel like that description gets longer every single time that we say it. I'm still your host, Frosk. I am still joined by Broxah and Medic, and this is the show where we talk about everything that's happening in the global competitive League of Legends scene. And it's been quite a banger since last time we saw you guys. Broxah and Medic, are you guys like buckled in and ready? Because this one's gonna go fast.
Yeah, I've got my seatbelt on. I've got my hands inside the cart, ready for a wild ride.
Yeah, it has been a wild ride, because let's just very quickly fly through everything. It has all been set in stone. Worlds has been drawn. We saw the LCK finals. We saw LPL finals. We saw LEC finals. We saw the LCS finals, which were, I'm going to say, a little bit disappointing, especially with all of the big build up onto it. So let's start with LCS and its playoff recap. The last time on LCS Playoffs. Who wants to take it away?
I'm trying to remember exactly where we were last time. It was EG had just beaten TL, right? Or
last time on LCS Playoffs, can a $7 million roster make it to Worlds?
But apparently not.
Oh no.
Yeah, so the last time we joined you guys, if you haven't been paying attention, TL did fall to Evil Geniuses, who will be the third team going to Worlds and representing North America. Their 30 representatives being EG, 100 Thieves, and Cloud9 as the victorious over the North American region. Now, this does mean good news and bad news for NA fans. Good news, your MSI representatives are back, and hopefully Danny maybe makes an appearance for Worlds. We still don't know. I still think his replacement in the ADC position definitely had a good showing. It went the distance. I would have loved to see Evil Geniuses in the final, but they couldn't take down 100 Thieves in Game 5. Bad news is that TL back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and I think actually it might be better just to talk about TL for a little bit before we get into like LCS, because we're going to talk about the other LCS teams when we talk about like Worlds, groups, etc. Right? But it's strange how often, and Broxah has more insight on obviously the inside of player teams, but it's strange how often,
don't bust me, please.
I'm not. I obviously don't want to put you on the spot, but like it's strange how often super teams fail, right? Like, and big investments fail. Vitality spent a lot of money this year as well, and they didn't even make playoffs.
Regardless of region, super teams fail.
Yeah, exactly. Like wherever you go, super teams really struggle. And I think like often it seems like you have multiple loud voices on a team, and when you have a super team and you say we're going to get 5 individual stars or 4 individual stars plus a support, which is often what happens, you do have a lot of people that have come in from success and successful styles. And when those styles then clash, it's like, well, I just won 2 titles on Mad Lions. Why are you disagreeing with my style? And Perks is like, well, I won 6 titles. I can't remember exactly how many titles, but when you have so many different strong voices, you can see where the conflict would arise from. I'm not saying these guys hate each other or anything. I'm just saying, like, if you put a lot of people that have had success into a single team, they won't always have had success in the same way. And when you have different playstyles trying to mesh, it can be very difficult unless you have a good coaching staff. And it seems like that might be what happened with TL here, especially with all the news coming out about Korjaj and Bjergsen not being on the same page, you know?
Yeah, as of recording this, Travis Gafford, of course, had an interview come out either last night or this morning on Hotline League that was talking about exactly what Medic just said, which was this idea that apparently Korjaj and Bjergsen didn't see eye to eye on how the game was to be played, and that may have been one of the things to undo. But as a jumping off point for Medic, I think it kind of comes down to this idea that a lot of time when we're evaluating players, especially within the eye of the community, one of the only things that you really have access to, unless you are pretty integral to the team's dynamic, is just the eye test on players and seeing either the flashy plays, the big plays, or the failed plays. And a lot of times the community is like, oh, this guy plays really well, or this guy has an amazing KDA, or this guy's the star player. And I think when you throw all of them together, that it's going to be great. But I think that ignores a lot of the intangibles that Medic's talking about behind the scenes in terms of communication, play styles, how they think about the game, and the other things that are far more important. And I think it just really underlines this idea that just because you are a star player doesn't mean that you can be a star player everywhere, and the team elements of League of Legends and how important those aspects are to create a successful dynasty.
I think a lot of organizations have just had a bit of a tendency to, look at what players did very well recently. I think it can even be called recency bias at this point, where you look at which players look really good in the previous split or in the previous year, and then they just, pick a few of those players, put them together without thinking about, yeah, like you said, the play styles and how those players might actually get along outside of the Rift. And if we look at a team like TL in particular, I am fairly convinced that all these 5 players were very vocal on the previous teams. They've all been used to different ways of playing the game. They've been around for a long time, so there's more likelihood of them having strong opinions, perhaps even a little bit of ego. You never know. And all of a sudden, all those past experiences you have to forget about because you have to start from scratch. You're building something new, and you need to find your new identity. And sometimes, when you have rosters with all these strong opinions, it just can be difficult for everyone to actually get on the same page. And it's something that I've seen before as well, because I've also been on perceived super teams, one being TL in 2020, right, where we were expected to dominate and do really well, but it took a long time before we find an identity and playstyle which really, really held us back. And Steve released a video where he shared with all Team Liquid's fans that he was pretty much done with the idea of super teams at this point, because he believed that we're in a different era now where you need to have a different approach. And I agree with that. I think when you have players who are able to play like a certain super high level of League of Legends, team play becomes so much more important because everyone has good mechanics and understanding of how to play fights. So just being on the same page makes a really big difference. And I think the future of like really good teams is going to be doing something like what EG did, where they have 3 veterans with 2 rookies, so that you have some players coming in with, you know, just a completely different perspective. We're open-minded, we're very enthusiastic, and who can push the older guys a little while the older guys help mold and teach them. Um, and I think that's something we're going to see a lot more going into next year.
I
Kind of. Oh, go
Well,
medic.
I was just gonna add on, like, I think it's super interesting to talk about, like, the have a couple of rookies, have a few veterans, and that mindset of we mold young players into what we want them to be alongside the veterans that have more experience. Because I think that definitely makes sense when you look at it for League, and it has worked for teams. But I also wonder, like, I wonder if there's a higher responsibility on coaching staff at times where when you are setting up a team like this, you should be able to have 5 superstar players on a roster. You should be able to have 5 players that are the best in their role in a league or in a region and have them perform well together. And I'm not always saying that it's entirely possible because obviously player tendencies and like play styles and also the player mentality plays into it. But when you look at a football team, for example, you can pick like Real Madrid, Barcelona. These teams are like known for getting the best talent in the world and making them all gel together. And it might, I mean, we talk about C9 systems and it's, a tiny bit of a meme, but obviously they won the LCS, so maybe not as much of a meme. But when you have these systems in place that can actually make players work together, and when you vet players well enough where you know that they're going to be willing to bend to your system to some degree, I wonder if super teams can still be a thing in the future. Just you have to be much more careful in how you vet the players. And I also don't know from the background, maybe you, Fosk or Broxah have more experience with this, but like how much time you actually have to vet a player in off season. Can it be like hey, come in, we'll talk you through our systems and we'll see if we gel? Or is it well, we want you, so we're just going to buy you straight away sort of situation?
It really depends on the organization, and I think one of the biggest issues going into that, especially when you're making a comparison to traditional sports like football, is that the players are worth so much more than the coaching staff. When you're putting multi-million-dollar contracts down, the players, and again, it's going to change organization to organization. No one's going to approach this the same way, but if you have a player that's worth $1 million and you have a coach that's worth, let's say, $250,000, you are going to prioritize your big investment, which are your players. And usually with these contracts, it's also going to come with that veteranship of that loud voice. And at the end of the day, um, 9 times out of 10, it's the player who's going to make the final call as opposed to the coach, especially when it comes to something like a draft. There will be teams that will have specific draft coaches that will have the idea presented to you, but when you're in the moment and it's someone like Bjergsen who's like, "No, I'm going to play this," you will bend that way. And so I think one of the biggest issues that League of Legends has comparatively to something like football is there's not a super coach. That just doesn't really exist to a wide scale. And until you have a coach that is on the same level as the players, then I think you're going to keep running into the same problem where unless you're getting everyone to gel in the same direction, it's really hard to find that mediator. Which then you look to hopefully getting more turnover between our pros and to coaches, where you then have that inherent respect, like with a Miffy or a Cold coming into the system that has a pro player background.
I think the authority part and actually being able to lead the team and take charge is a really big one because in football, like I watched a lot of football documentaries, and some of the problems are similar where they have star players that start getting a bit out of line. But in those scenarios, sometimes, not always, the coach can actually end up having the final say, and they get what they want. Whereas, like you said, in esports, a lot of these star players they can do whatever they want. I've even seen it myself on stage where the coach is coming in with a draft prepared, the exact scenario plays out, everything has been talked about, and then a certain player
Cap
is like,
says,
no,
"I
I'm
wanna
not
play
gonna
Vayne."
play this.
I'm playing
Yeah.
Vayne
Oh,
right now.
we had actually practiced that in scrims, so that was actually a scenario we had talked about. No, but legit, like you have it all planned out, and then someone is like, no, I refuse to do this, and then they just lock in a different champion. Which in football, I mean, you can't really compare that exact scenario, but you go directly against the coach, and in different sports that that would be seen as a huge problem, but here it's just accepted. And I think it comes down to the coaches not having the authority to actually make the big decisions, because in theory that's how it should be, right? They're the ones with the big picture, and us players are often, of course we can look at the big picture too, but often we're mostly concerned about our own individual matchups. So I think the coaches having that power as well as having the skills to manage all these players is so important. And I think it's also worth noting that in traditional sports, to become a coach, you usually, you know, have to do some sort of studying or practicing before you can become a coach for the big teams. But here, in theory, right now, I could say, I am a coach. And then going into next year, I could get a head coach position, maybe, for one of the top teams, right? It's something we've seen before. Even Miffy, when he retired, he became the head coach for Fnatic almost right away. And just because someone is a good player doesn't necessarily mean they're a great coach, because it's completely different skills that you need. And I think in a few years it's gonna be a little different, because what we want from a coach is gonna be different. How much power we give them is gonna be different. But right now there's just not authority enough, I feel like.
No, I completely agree. And until we kind of wrap this one up and kind of move on to our overarching playoff recap, I just want for the people who would be listening to this, I think Broxah and Medic bring up great points about kind of the nuance into all of this. It's not as easy as saying like this is the player's fault. They're the ones who make these rash decisions in the heat of the moment that then throw games, or it's the coach's fault. They don't know enough and they got the position they shouldn't have. Like it's hard. It's very different skill sets, and it
Yeah.
is a muscle that hasn't been worked long enough in our esport to level out. And I think you're seeing some of the growing pains in it when it comes to things like these super teams or coaches or even players struggling with this transition. But going back to LCS playoffs again, it is Cloud9 as our victors. Do we want to say, or before we kind of get into the Worlds group, do you guys have anything that you want to say about playoffs at all, or do we just want to move directly into LEC?
Well, personally, I was a bit surprised not only seeing C9 win, but also the fashion that they actually won in, because they were fifth place in the regular split. They looked pretty okay, but like after beating CLG in the upper bracket quarterfinal 3-2, they just started destroying everyone. Like they beat EG 3-1, they beat 100 Thieves 3-1, and then they 3-0'd 100 Thieves in the final as well. Like everything just aligned so perfectly for them, and I think it's really impressive how they managed to just fix the problems they had in regular split, and probably also a pretty lucky meta for them with it being such an AD carry focused meta, and with them having by far the best AD carry in the league. Like Berserker just went absolutely crazy. So I actually thought it was going to be a more of a battle, but C9 just dominated everything.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I think, no shade to FBI, but with Berserker's performance and Cloud9's flexibility in draft to run double Enchanter, having the Zillion on Jensen, who, I mean, we've seen Jensen this split have crazy pop-off performances on carries, but the ability to go and say, I don't need to be the carry for this series, and to work with double Enchanter and just empower a Sivir to run around and get as many kills as possible, versus 100 Thieves, who were really reliant and have really been very reliant on Abadage himself having great pop-off performances. And Abba, had his moments on his Azirs and his Silases, but as Broxah said, the meta was really geared towards these 80 carry players, and this position in particular being very powerful. And I think the fact that Cloud9 had the flexibility that they didn't need Jensen to be a carry, whereas 100 Thieves didn't necessarily have the same flexibility where they really need to rely on Abadage, but his position was inherently less valuable.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think the fact that Fudge is so comfortable on carries in the top lane really helped them out, because when you put when you put Jensen on Zillion mid, you do need another like key damage source. So having Fudge step into the Jax, be able to bring something that actually adds another layer of complexity to the draft really helped. I also think they all had great series, but I think Blabber's really leveled up again. Like every time I watch the guy, I'm impressed by how much he continues to improve. And I was I think he was like left off or he was quite low on like the top 10 all-time LCS player lists, and I was a little disappointed. I think he's like a generational talent in jungle for LCS. He would be probably in my top 5 LCS players,
I think it's like
especially natives.
one of those situations where post this finals probably put Blabber,
Oh
because
yeah,
I
maybe
do
before the finals, yeah.
yeah, I do agree that this finals was probably one of Blabber's like best career showings. But I agree with you that, you could see that it had been working up for a long time coming, but this was finally when you saw it all come together with a very deserved finals MVP performance from Blabber.
Mhm.
But moving over into the LEC, you guys just got back from a road trip. How was the arena?
Amazing. Like it's so missed it
Yeah.
so much. So fun.
And of course, a very big, I mean, we just talked about kind of the emotional ride of Blabber getting finals MVP. Otawamne finally being able to lift his LEC trophy with Rogue being crowned champions. And walk me through kind of the overarching of LEC playoffs and this, I think, very emotional moment for Rogue to finally lift.
You taking this one, Maz?
Sure. Well, so I think going into LEC playoffs, it was pretty open. Most people that I've spoken to in the studio or around the scene felt like more or less any team could actually end up taking it, which made this playoff so exciting. Maybe the one team that wasn't expected to do too well was Misfits, but even them, you didn't really know exactly what to expect. And um, Fnatic obviously had a really good, well, a bit of a sketchy start into greatness, where
Strong finish.
they were close to losing to Excel, but after that they leveled up big time. They smashed Misfits, they smashed Mad Lions, and then we had the top 3 teams, G2, Rogue, and Fnatic left, where Rogue had just gotten stomped by G2. They didn't seem too dominant. Fnatic and G2, on the other hand, were the favorites, and everyone just expected the G2 Fnatic final, um, like we've had so many times in the past. But after losing the first games of Fnatic in the semifinal, Rogue just started absolutely demolishing them, and they destroyed them in drafts with their flexibility and their willingness to adapt, where Fnatic kept doing the same thing. It never worked. They were not adapting. Rogue just got better and better. The same thing happened against G2, and it just felt like in every aspect when it comes to drafting, adaptation, and preparation, they were just so far ahead. And that combined with Comp being a monster in the semifinal and final, Malrang playing like a god, all of them just playing so well as a team. Rogue just destroyed everyone in Malmö and won the split, which was a beautiful moment. And I actually think I don't remember the last time I've seen so many people like cry in one day. Just happy tears, but people were so ecstatic that Rogue won. Not only because it was different than G2 and Fnatic, but because Odo Amne has tried to win a split for like 7 years. So in the winning moments, or maybe even the 15 minutes after that, like everywhere I looked, people were crying left, right, and center. So I think it was a pretty beautiful ending to our split.
I want to just throw back to like a couple of episodes ago. We were talking about teams that we thought would fare really well on the international stage from each region, and of course, like G2 would keep coming up. How are you guys feeling now, especially seeing this current form of Rogue? Do we still feel that, in terms of international competition, that G2 is kind of the golden child from Europe, or do we think that Rogue is actually in a really good position? Or do you think this was just like they had good read on the European competition, it all came together finally, Odo was like, "Not today," and finally got to lift his trophy?
I think in the past I've made the mistake of erring too much on like the known, right? And being like, okay, well G2 and Fnatic are two top teams in Europe, and then anyone else is like below them. And I think most people came into this finals still thinking G2 would win, even though Rogue had beaten Fnatic the day before because G2 won 3-0 before. So I'm gonna say Rogue are our top dogs. They literally just 3-0'd the finals. It wasn't close a lot of the time. Like every single player on that team was better than their opponent, including the mid lane. And like often you look to G2 and you say Caps is the guy that's going to decide things for them. Larson didn't let Caps really do anything. Like Caps had one moment in the entire series where he looked like, claps like a really good player. The Sandra, he gets a Ring of Frost onto 3 people in the mid lane, and it looks like G2 can come back, but then Marang decides to cut the wave because apparently he wasn't thinking and he wanted to go in, which is a direct quote from him. He's like, I wasn't thinking about cutting the wave, I just wanted to kill them. Like it was crazy. But yeah, Rogue are top dogs. If considering their improvement in 1 week between losing to G2 3-0 and then getting to this position, yes, a lot of it came off the back of starting to ban Senna because Senna was their downfall in the first series. That's Senna Seraphine bot lane. But every player on that team looked really good. And every player on that team stood up to the pressure of being in front of a live audience. So I have a lot of faith in Rogue now. I'm not saying they're like gonna smash all the Korean and the LPL teams, but I definitely think they are the best team from Europe, and I expect them to continue to improve through whatever bootcamp they decide to do going into New York.
You said you wanted to have a kind of a tangent here in the
Yes,
LEC medic.
I do. So I just saw this on Reddit, like just as we started.
Oh, do I need to open the browser right now?
No, it's fine. I can give you a translation. I can discuss say what's happening. So obviously there's been a lot of complaints about Mad Lions making it to Worlds, right? A lot of people saying, hey, they made it through without any best of fives, right? They haven't won a single best of 5 all year. Obviously, LEC format not the best for 4 seeds, and I think considering we had the same thing happen in, was it 2020, it should have been reworked somehow. I feel
But
like
it was also unexpected that we were gonna have 4
it was
seeds.
unexpected, but the last time it happened, we had the same situation, so we could have fixed it. I have no influence over that stuff. I'm as annoyed as all of you guys at home. But there was an interview in L'Equipe, which is a huge French newspaper. And I think, is it with our new commissioner or our old commissioner? It says new LEC commissioner. It's in French, so I can't actually tell you exactly who it was. Saying they are looking at changing the LEC format for next year. Removing best of one. Well, removing some best of ones. And there were several options, all of which included a decrease in the number of best of ones that were voted on by the teams. Now, they don't give any more detail than this, nor do they confirm that anything is actually going to change, but they say things have been voted on. What I thought we could do is discuss if you were to change the LEC format, what would you guys like to see? What would be like your ideal? Would you want like one long split with a weird MSI qualification in the middle? Would you like 3 small splits? Would you like no best of ones, all best of 5s, only playoffs, triple elimination bracket somehow? I don't know. But I thought I'd propose this question to you, and you could tell me what you're thinking.
Okay, well, to give you some time to think, Broxah and Medic, I will first kind of lay out for the audience or the listener about both sides of this discussion from a format and a broadcast. To turn on a studio, it cost $50,000. just to turn on the lights, to get the camera. So from a financial point of view, anytime you lengthen a split, you are significantly increasing the cost. And that is one of the things that we need to weigh. Because when it comes to competitive integrity, everyone's going to say best of 3 all day, best of 5, double elimination bracket. But we are not just about competitive integrity. We are also trying to balance a business model where people need to make money and have jobs. And so this is the balance that Riot is trying to get right. What is financially viable, what is also good for the player's health, because then you also need to factor in burnout. You know, you see it all the time with players. These schedules can be incredibly grueling. And if you're suddenly tripling the amount of games that players are playing, so it's, do you go everything into competitive integrity, make this all best of series so you definitively know who's going to win? You are tripling the amount of games. Your viewership is going to go down. We see this every single time. Everyone says it online. Best of 3, I'd watch it. No one wants to watch a best of 3 or a best of 5 between the bottom teams. No one does. Everyone hates it. No one watches it. That kills the viewership metrics, which then makes it harder to take to sponsors from Riot or the team's behalf to try to get sponsors. So it really impacts the business overall in negative ways. That is why the current model shows with viewership trends, people like best of ones. They actually watch them no matter what the vocal minority is saying about best of 3s. And it's easier to get sponsors. There's less likelihood of burnout. It is not in the best interest of competitive integrity. That's both sides.
Well,
So, oh, you first, Matt. Okay, go.
so I have tried both best of ones and best of threes as a player. I feel like there was even a time where there was best of twos, but I think that may have been before my time. So when I joined the league, there was best of threes, and if I remember correctly, the way it was being run back then was that you were divided in 2 groups in the LEC of 5 teams, and there was 2 streams running at the same time, which created a pretty strange scenario where usually one stream would have like 4 times as many viewers as the other one, because in one team you would have Fnatic, whatever, and on the other you would have some of the teams that don't really have fans. And
It's true.
It's true.
it sounds harsh, but it's the reality we live in. Some teams aren't the greatest at building fan bases. That's how it was back then. That's how it is now. But you know, like you said, Frosk, it skewed the viewership metrics like completely. There was a lot of problems because they had like so many people working in the studio for no reason, and at the end of the day, ended up changing to best of ones. And personally speaking, I have never minded playing best of ones too much. Like if we look at Worlds, for example, or even MSI, you need to be able to excel in both. Like best of ones and best of fives are key parts of both tournaments. And I think the best way to change the format, in my opinion, would be to just create a scenario where you have a mix of both, really, where you give the teams practice in best of ones and in best of fives. Now, how exactly you would do that, I don't really know. But I think that sort of adjustment would be really healthy. It would also create more excitement from a viewer point of view. Like in an ideal world, I would just like change it completely so we have way less of the split and more international tournaments, but that would require us to work with like every single league in the world, which is a bit more optimistic. But that would be the preferred case in my world.
Yeah,
And
I'd
oh,
like more
go Medic.
international tournaments as well. Someone brought up the fact, I think it was 2013 when there were 7 international tournaments in a single year. Imagine if we could go back to that. It would be so
Well,
good.
what if we did a system kind of like where you bring back Battle of the Atlantic?
Rift Rivals, the thing that no one watched.
Yeah, but you actually
Alright,
make it have like competitive value to it. So like, what if you did something where North America and Europe have to fight for 4 spots? So it could all be North American teams, or it could all be European teams. You run your domestic splits. You get your top 4 teams, and then you put them together. Like cost-wise, this never makes sense because you'd have to fly
the 4 teams out to one. Yeah.
Let's just beam into a world where we just have money to burn. 4 teams, 4 from EU, 4 from NA. You then run your MSI prepper, who's going to be the Western representative for for MSI, and that it's 4 spots. You can have, if all 4 European teams are better than all 4 North American teams, boom, you have 4 European representatives for the Western teams. And then you literally make it about, because then on the other side, the Rift Rivals for LCK and LPL is a banger. The top 4 LCK teams versus the top 4 LPL teams. And then it's just like literally East versus West for your MSI conference. Ooh.
It would be great, but I will say, without flaming North America, if I was on the side, whichever side it is, that doesn't get any representatives into MSI, I would be so cross. I'd be like, but I want my representation. I want my team there, you know?
And again, it always feeds into the system. Like, why people are always like, play-ins is so bad. Why do we do this? And no one ever watched. It's like that is really important for, again, the viewership. Not even just like fandom, but making money. Making money, that is so important to get them on the large stage. And it does well for our regions. Because again, Riot's goals are not just about competitive integrity, but about the ecosystem in a whole. And like, people can have so many debates about, you know, which tier 1 esport has done it the best between CSGO or Dota or League of Legends or Overwatch, like whatever it happens to be, Rainbow Six. But I think something that no one can deny that Riot has done exceptionally well is League of Legends has created the strongest, most secure, best holistic ecosystem for the majority of its esports base, not just the top teams. You can go to any sort of like prize breakdown in like CSGO or Valorant or T1 and see like the top teams making way more money than the top teams in League of Legends, but that's like 2 teams out of 50 teams. League of Legends has somehow managed to make this like viable for hundreds of people to have jobs. LCK Regional Finals Recap. So there are 4 LCK representatives are going to be Damwon Kia, Genji, of course, T1, and DRX. So the last time we recorded this, we're like, there's no way KT Rolster messed this up. Spoiler alert. KT Rolster messed it up.
They were so close as well. Even in the final game, I had hope for them, and then they just lose it. And Vikler, like, has probably the worst Talia performance I've seen from him all year. It was such a disappointment. I felt so bad. But yeah, KT failed once again. Some of us had hope, and then it was taken away from us by the cruel grasp of Deft and Zika and Piosik. I think DRX should be a good representative for LCK. I know, Broxah, last time we talked, you said, I think DRX will be able to take the win. I totally disagreed with you. So maybe you just have more insight and more knowledge about these things than I do. But I just worry about Piosik on the... Piosik on the international stage. No, wait. It is Piosik, right? Who plays DRX? Am I being... Yeah, because they subbed in Yuhan.
Yeah, he's one of the junglers, but...
I worry about Piosik because sometimes he seems a little bit like he understands jungle pathing, and sometimes he seems a little bit like he's not quite sure what he's doing.
The peanut factor.
Yeah.
But they started subbing in Yuhan, and then... I mean, that's a big part of why they even made it to Worlds to begin with, because this guy was subbed in versus KT, won both of his games, he went 3-1 versus Sandbox. Like, probably without him, if they had to play with Piosik every game, I don't think they would have made it to Worlds, because it wasn't looking too good. I'm actually not even sure what happened to Piosik, because we scrimmed a lot against DRX in 2020 when I was at Worlds with CL, and Piosik was so good back then. He was so hyped as well. He was like one of the new superstars coming out of Korea, and now things are looking a little rough. But I think the regional finals in Korea were just crazy, with DRX KT going to Game 5, Sandbox DRX went to Game 5 as well. Just such an intense tournament for those world spots, but I don't know. I'm happy in a way that DRX made it, because I think seeing Deft and Beryl in particular is super exciting for me. I can't wait to see them in action, but I would also have loved to see especially Prince from Sandbox make it, because this guy has been such a dominant AD carry, and I feel like this would be the perfect meta for him to really, really shine internationally.
So to kind of leaping off of that, because I think I really want to start talking about DRX and Deft. Like, I love that you bring that up, Broxah. But to kind of I guess, structure this easier, very quickly going over LPL, because LPL also have their regional finals. We already saw their playoff finals, but then their regional qualifiers, RNG making it through, EDG is also representing, and then you have Top Esports and JDG. So kind of a mix of the old guard and the new guard, which then leads us into our play-ins discussion, where we kind of focus back in on the likes of the DRX, because play-ins is disgusting right now. The World Draw Show went through, and right now there's 2 groups for plans, and there's 6 teams, I believe, 8 teams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 teams
Six teams per group.
in both groups, and you have Group B with DRX, RNG, Saigon Buffaloes. I'll throw them in there. They mess people up every single time. Mad Lions.
Mad Lions needs to be more of the Saigon Buffaloes level here. Like,
Listen,
we haven't
they're
seen
right
them win a
next
best
to
of.
it.
Mad Lions. We'll throw them in there. Maybe they can do something.
Wildcats, Isurus, and then in the other group you have Oceania's Chiefs, Loud, Evil Geniuses, Detonation Focus Me, Beyond Gaming, and Fnatic. So I'm going to say that, to me, Group B looks like the more devastating group. And reminder that only 2 teams make it out of these groups. Now, of course, everyone's like, play-ins. We know exactly what's going to happen, even though random shit usually always happens. Although I will say, I think the last 2 years, plans have been pretty consistent, and the teams got out that you expected to get out. So, as it stands right now, the expected teams to make it out of play-ins that everyone is saying is your favorites. Your DRX, your RNG, whatever order you want to put it in. People are like, Mad Lions, kill them. Buffalo, I don't know who you are. And people are like, Wildcats and Isurus, who are these people? And then on the other side, I think it's a bit more up in the air about who necessarily gets out. Do you guys have like a favorite from Group A? Do you disagree with who you think's getting out in Group B?
You said DRX, RNG in Group B, yeah?
That's who everyone's assuming.
I don't think anyone can disagree with that. If they do, maybe they don't watch much League of Legends, because there's just no way the rest of the teams there should be able to challenge. I think Fnatic plus EG is my standard from Group A. Obviously, it will be interesting to see how Beyond play, because I think I was actually quite disappointed in them in their finals, where they lost to Flying Oysters. It was pretty one-sided, 3-0, and they'd obviously...
What an excellent name.
I know, right?
The Flying Oysters. Go.
Sorry, yeah. Oh, yeah, I was a little disappointed in them, and there is 5 players I think we haven't seen internationally as well, if I remember correctly. So it's whether or not they can live up to the expectations of a PCS second seed, or whether they play at the level that I think I saw them play at in the finals, right? So I'd go Fnatic EG, and then obviously there's the Danny of it all, right? Where he decided to rightly sub himself out for mental health reasons after they qualified for Worlds, and whether or not the month and a half he has, or probably 2 weeks he has before they start scrimming and prepping and getting everything ready, is going to be enough time for him to get into a spot where he's comfortable again, or whether he needs more time. So
I think this Worlds in general is going to be really interesting, with both EU, Korea, and China sending 4 teams to the tournament. Group stage is obviously going to be really crazy, but yeah, looking at the groups, imagine being in Group B as a wildcard region and seeing both DRX and RNG in your group, plus a little Saigon Buffalo and Mad Lions in there. This is really, really not a fun time for Isurus and Wildcats. Holy moly.
Imagine being in Group B and looking over at Group A and being like, what? We had a chance over there. Although maybe Isurus and Wildcats you're actually stuck in here with us.
I mean, Saya's
Right.
back, right? The most decorated player in the history
Of history.
of histories.
He's
Was
more
it 11
decorated than
titles, I
Faker.
wanna say? It might be 12 titles now for Isurus. He played on Rainbow Seven for a bit, was on Leon before that. But yeah, I really like watching Saya play, because you always know he can do something, even though he isn't quite of the level of a Xiaohu, perhaps. He is still a guy that you expect to have a few pop-off moments over the course of play-ins.
And again, just to have some like real talk, the broadcast understands. Like no one is of any delusion that when you're going in, the play-ins teams are at the emerging regions are at a very uphill climb when looking at the major regions in terms of competition. But the importance and value of play-ins and bringing the emerging regions here is some of their fandoms are some of the biggest in the world. And so again, when you're talking about that viewership metric, it is really important to bring these fandoms in, but then also B, the only way that these emerging regions become major regions is through the experience that they gain here, not only as players, but then also leveling up the broadcast talent that goes abroad. Again, having that viewership metric and the importance of going to Worlds and taking those numbers back to their domestic regions that they can then get used to get more endemic or non-endemic sponsors to bring more money into the league to help build up that ecosystem. So every time I see people dissing on plans, I'm like, we're making jobs over here. This is for the good of esports. Suck it up, get in there with the Brazilian fans, and just start caps lock. I do think they should change the broadcast structure, though. I don't think it helps us there. Like, okay, real talk again. I actually think play-in should only be broadcast by just like host it and have anytime Brazil is playing, you have the Brazilian broadcast that people can watch. And then anytime Oceania is playing, it's the Oceanic broadcast that people can watch. I think it is like really weird that they make the primary English broadcast try to cover everything as like a global broadcast when it should just be like you stay on one channel and it's just like, the Brazilian teams are covering. Because I also think that's cool exposure to watching other regions and other broadcast styles.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I think the obvious complaint that people will have is it's not in English, so I can't understand it, right? And like that's where you have to draw the line of like how important is play-ins to us. I actually think having like a dedicated play-ins caster team would make it a lot easier. Where you say, okay, we're not putting the A team on play-ins because a lot of the time now, like you have a few casters that will get into straight from groups, so like your Veddies, your Flowers, etc. But you still have quite a few people that will do play-ins into groups, into like even all the way up to semifinals.
I used to do
finals,
play-ins
right?
all the way to finals, and it doubles your workload.
It's so much extra work because you're learning like 12 extra teams on top
That
of
are
the
only
12
going to
you have
be
to
there
learn.
for
Yeah,
10
for one
days.
day, and then people get
Yeah.
mad at you. And like, I'm not saying when I say people get mad at you, this is not the fan's fault, right? If a fan gets mad at me because I mispronounce a Brazilian player's name, it's like I'm trying my hardest, but it's not your fault for being mad that I can't pronounce your player's name properly. It's just in the slew of 120 names that I had to learn for this Worlds, I messed that one up, and I'm sorry about it, right? But it's so much extra work. And 8-game days is a lot for casters. So if you got in I'm going to call them B tier casters. So you have your A tier of like the regular core talent on the major region broadcasts, including like, LPL, LCK, etc. If you get in the step below that, or people that don't want to work groups or are taking time off or whatever, and you put them on that and you say, not 8-game days because that's dumb and it's a lot of extra work, but comes down to the lighting up the studio for extra days. It's 6-game days. You guys have control. We'll give you a experienced producer. We'll give you an experienced writer. We'll give you an experienced stats person. You could make an incredible broadcast out of it. The problem becomes when it's people that have to prep everything else. Yeah, the academy team. Get Cubby on. Get
the EU
like
Masters
Nymera
guys.
and ERL people. You could make it such, and they put so much work into this as well. It's just, if you're a mainstay caster, and I say this like having to take a mental health break for myself right now, it is a flipping ton of work, and it does get deprioritized because I know if I cast RNG versus T1 later in the tournament, like for group stage, that is so much more important I do a good job on than if I cast Loud versus Chiefs. And that's no insult to Loud versus Chiefs. It's purely where people are going to watch and where I invest my time,
It is brutal.
It really is.
But side tangent over.
Yeah, that was very much up towards
No,
the side.
I 100% agree. I think that there's different ways that we can like restructure it to not only create a better product for fans and for teams, but also help the longevity and workload across our industry.
8 games a day. It's like, even if you're not casting, you have to watch them all, guys. Like at the moment, I'm dreading catching up on some of them when I wake up in the morning because they start at 10 p.m. and you're jet lagged and it's pain.
So if we assume that, let's just for sake, say Fnatic, Evil Geniuses, and then DRX and RNG are our 4 teams that make it out. Because there are 4 teams from certain regions, LCK, LPL, and EU, then it pretty much locks in where certain teams can be. So it would lock in that Group D, for example, would be Genji, I love this team, Flying Oyster, 100 Thieves, and RNG. Because there's a Chinese team in every other group, so RNG would have to slot into that. So, with that context in mind,
And
where
DRX would have to slot into Group C, assuming they win.
yes,
Yeah.
where do we think the group of death is? Also, how do you guys define group of death? Because I've always defined group of death as like you go in there and anyone can die, so anyone can pop out. But other people define it as, I think, from the lens of I'm a Western team
Yeah,
in
a
this
Western
group
fan,
and
so
I
this is
have
the bad
no
group,
way
yeah.
of getting out.
So, on the first definition, I think Group B is the group of death. Because I think anyone from JDG, G2, and Damwon could have a bad week and get knocked out. And then the last team in there is probably another EU team, actually, when you think
Wouldn't
about
it
it. It's probably
be
a Fnatic or a Mad.
Evil Geniuses?
So it can be EG, but it can also be a second EU team because they waived the EU play-ins teams
For the 4
not being able
teams?
to go into an EU group. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean EG could just really show up as well, and I think they could take games off Damwon and G2, even though they struggled obviously to take games off G2 in MSI. And I think if that's a Fnatic or a Mad, they could take games off G2 definitely because they have, and I think they could take games off Damwon. I think JDG is a little bit above them all, but you never know. One Chinese team is always sacrificed on the altar of group stage, and it could be JDG. We've seen it. We've seen it happen to Chinese teams in the past.
Can you imagine if Fnatic got slotted into that group
Oh my
next to
god.
G2?
I mean, it would be an amazing group to watch, but it would be hell to experience.
It would really suck for EU, but I kind of want to see it. I'm not gonna lie. That
Or
would be like
it
the
would be
ultimate hype
pure
group.
euphoria, Broxah.
I would love
with both making
JDG
it
and
out.
Damwon get knocked out. Oh my! And they can't meet in quarterfinals as well. So then G2 Fnatic semifinals. One of them's in the final. Easy.
Why not both?
I
Both
want
in the final,
Fnatic in
easy.
Group A.
I mean,
think
then EU has to win. Sorry, Frosk.
if you had Fnatic, Cloud9, T1, and EDG all in the same group, I think that's a poggers group. And I would say that Group A for me then becomes the group of death, and how I define it, which is literally anyone is popping out of this. You assume it would be T1 and EDG, but Cloud9's performance looks really good right now. And Fnatic in week 2 of Worlds groups, you're like, I don't know, they fucking make it every time. So
yeah, and I really think like Fnatic, when Upset is on form, and when with Razork in the current form he's in, if they can maintain that and evolve some of the weaker portions, then I really think they can challenge. But they obviously sometimes struggle to find that synergy that they need to really be consistent.
I think as long as Fnatic ups their game and like drafting in particular, they're gonna be fine. And for what it's worth, that's gonna be a little bit different in best of ones because their weakness was adapting in best of fives. Well, in best of one, you can have whatever strategy you want prepared going into that specific opponent, and if you win the first game, then they don't have a chance to adapt. That's just all there is to it. I would also love to see Fnatic in Group A though, because then we have like some of the most historic, well-known organizations from all the 4 regions in the same group.
it's
who
a
are all
banger.
playing at a very high level. Yeah, it would be like really, really hype for sure.
Viewership on Group A days is just like it skyrockets.
Yeah,
definitely.
The thing is that so again, it's very much about how you define things, because now kind of the next question is which group is the easiest? And again, it feels like which group is the easiest either from the perspective of there's 2 clear top teams that are probably going to get out and not be challenged, or is it easiest in that, hey, there's a really good chance that one of my Western teams can just pop out of this one as a second tier. For me, I think that Group D is clearly the easiest group to guess, and that if this is truly RNG, I think Genji and RNG's level over someone like Flying Oysters and 100 Thieves is just non-comparable. So I would think that from a betting perspective or a guessing perspective, that Group D is just like the easiest one, that this is probably how this is going to turn out. Every other group, I honestly there's favorites, But because of the nature of Worlds and Best of 1 in round robin, I'm like, you have one bad day, you're donezo. I have no idea how this shakes out.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think from an EU perspective, with my EU fan bias lens on, because I can be biased now because I'm not in contract. So, Rogue are going to win Group C. Rogue take that group. Because
Oh,
that's
wow.
the last team that comes in there is DRX, and Rogue are going to poop all over DRX. Malrang against Piosik? Come on. Come on.
Yuhan. You
who
think
is-
they're gonna play
Okay.
Piosik?
Okay, put Yuhan in. Who cares? Comp versus Deft? Comp? I've never even heard of Deft. Who is this man? Come on, like it's such an easy group for Rogue.
I
Dear
want a
God,
world
easy quarterfinal.
where Rogue
Top esports, bottom esports.
is about to take like first seed out of the group, and then GAM Esports just comes out of nowhere. Just
So I actually watched some Gigabyte Marines in preparation for this because I was like, it's always good to have at least a cursory idea of how Gigabyte Marines are
give
playing.
it to me, medic.
It's a Levi diff. Levi is the thing that makes this team work, and like he's great. And their top laner, I think his name is Kiaya. 1 second, I'm just gonna check it.
Can I just call him Kia?
Kia, yeah. It's Kia and then YA, and I don't know how to pronounce that, and I don't need
Kia.
to. So Kia. He's actually really good as well. But I think the issue for GAM is they make quite a few blunders. Their team fights are solid, but they often miss position in team fights. And I don't think they're going to be able to do that against the caliber of opposition they're in this group. They won a few fights against Saigon that they shouldn't have won because Levi just found a kick. And it's like, well, your AD carry's caught, your support's caught. Levi somehow miraculously gets onto the back line and kicks the enemy AD carry into your top lane, and you win because of that. So I don't think that Rogue, Top Esports, and DRX are going to give them those same opportunities, which means I think GAM are actually going to end up last in this group. And now we all know I've cursed them all. GAM top the group, as you say, Frosk, and make it through to quarterfinals. And then take down G2, because of course they do. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they?
Listen, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And this is the thing of when you face really aggressive teams like the LPL teams or some of the LCK teams or Gigabyte Marines. It's like, yeah, we stick to the plan. We know we're better players. We know we're a better team. But shit goes sideways when Nocturne is level 6 at like 4 minutes in the game.
Yeah. I have
you.
flashbacks right now.
Oh, God.
It's funny, like for Gigabyte Marines, like here we are 5 years later. Like I played against them 5 years ago with Fnatic, 2017 Worlds. The only goal going into every game was shut down Levi, don't let him carry, and you're gonna win. And then somehow, as you're saying, Nocturne is level 6, our Karma is still level 3, he ult spot, and the game is just over. Like we're just doomed. Like this guy, yeah, you imagine it being so easy to shut him down, but crazy things happen as Worlds. That's how it goes.
I'll never forget. I was watching. It was RNG versus. I can't remember who the LCK team was, but I was sitting next to Deficio. We were watching it. It was Mata. It was when Mata was still the RNG support, and he was playing Alistar. And Deficio goes, they're gonna get stalled out here. The LCK team's just gonna be able to hold this mid tower, and they're just gonna farm it out. And I was like, Mata's about to flash this guy, and immediately, and it's you have a plan until you get punched in the face. And sometimes you can't, and like the person who's punching you in the face, you can't be like, time out, guys, we're supposed to play this one slow. Can we just? That's how I always think about it. So, to wrap up this episode, let's just go bullet fire. Predictions. Just like gun to your head. Top 2 teams that are making it out. Go A, B, C, D. Broxah, you go first.
Okay. Group A gonna be. Man. Wait, I don't want to be because it's so easy to just say LCK and LPL. Okay, Group A, I am gonna say T1 EDG. Group B, I'm gonna say G2 and Damwon. I'm gonna leave out JDG. I'm gonna predict that they're the Chinese team that has a rough time. I mean, it's a kind of a coin flip.
They're being
I feel like,
sacrificed.
but there we are.
Yes, yes.
Taking some notes.
Yeah. Group C is gonna be Rogue and Top Esports. And then Group D, Yeah, I mean, I have to
RNG
say
going to
Gen G,
Rogue, yeah.
RNG. There's just no way. I guess with that prediction, I just predicted no NA team to make it out of groups, but G2 and Rogue are gonna make it. So there's that. So EU fans would be happy if that becomes reality.
Yeah, I think
There it
if we
is.
get 2 teams out, I think we're pretty happy. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna go T1 C9 because I think EDG is the team that gets sacrificed, and I think if it's still an
Okay.
AD carry centric meta, then I mean he's against Viper though, isn't he? Oh, yeah, okay. It has to be T1
It's
EDG. I
Viper
forgot it was
medic. That's
Viper
what
for a second
that's what
there.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. It's like, is Viper really not gonna carry here?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, T1 EDG, JDG G2, Rogue Top Esports, Gen G RNG.
Wow, you just
Yeah.
went with all the favorites. Okay, I'm gonna go EDG Cloud9. I'll take
Oh,
I'll take JDG and Dom1 Kia. I'm gonna take
Okay.
Rogue and Top Esports. And I'll take Gingy
It's
and
Flying Oyster in there. Do it, Frost. Do it. If it works, you're a genius.
and good old RNG.
Okay, so you don't have G2 making it out of their group,
I don't have G2 making it out, and I don't have
and you don't
T1
have
making it
T1
out.
making it out. That
Yeah.
is
That's
the
the
T1 one is the spicy one.
that's the
Sure.
spicy one.
you're gonna get some trucks outside your house, Frost. Just be prepared.
I've got plenty of trucks outside my house. Watch it actually be C9 T1 that make it out, and it's EDG
Or
that don't.
C9 Fnatic. Like that would be
Ooh.
hilarious if both T1 and
Oh.
EDG get knocked out.
No,
All-
C9 and Mad Lions.
Oh baby. And then G2
Yeah,
Fnatic, then Rogue Top Esports, and 100 Thieves Flying Oyster.
Do you guys
And
have
it's the first time in history that LCK and LPL have less teams in the quarterfinals than LEC and LCS.
Do you guys want to go on and be like, boom, this team's winning everything? Just throwing it out, world
I
champions.
mean, we can. The problem always is you get to Worlds quarterfinals, and then the team you thought would win everything at the start of the tournament just doesn't. And someone like Suning comes out of the blue. It's like, hey guys, we're really good right now. Yeah, we'll fight against Damwon. Excellent. So yeah, we can if you want. Do you want to just do the?
I think Jackie Love is getting another world championship trophy. I think this is Top Esports.
Ooh.
Okay.
I need to have a coin to flip to choose between the 4 LPL teams.
You don't think Gen G or T1 can do it? Does anyone think that an LCK team can win?
I think Gen
Gen
G
G
can.
can do it. Yeah, Gen G's on my list of.
Yeah, I think with Ruler and this AD carry meta, like for sure they have a good shot. T1, I'm not entirely convinced. They haven't looked that convincing here in the summer split. But yeah, I think it's Gen G or whichever one of the LPL teams just pop off and destroy everyone, which literally seems to be a coin flip every year. You never know. If I have to say a Western team, it's really tricky.
You don't
right?
have to say a Western team.
No, he
we're
does
picking our
now.
best
He
teams.
does need to say a
Okay,
Western
no.
team.
Okay.
You can follow in my footsteps after Medic. We both need to say which Western team makes it the furthest at Worlds. Not wins.
Cloud9.
Okay.
Well, I
Cloud9,
have Rogue
that
to
was
win the
quick.
whole thing.
Okay.
So Rogue is
Yeah.
Rogue's my winner.
Okay. That's
Yep.
a bit of recency bias right there, Medic. But we take those as well.
What else bias am I meant to put it on? Like, these are the best teams in the world. They just won things. Am I not meant to look at their current performance and evaluate where they're going to be? Huh?
Maybe it's fair. Okay, I'm gonna say. I would say C9 over Rogue right now.
Yes,
I would.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Rogue would be second though.
So
I'm
it's a
not
C9
too
Rogue
convinced.
final.
I think Rogue were really good, but man, Fnatic and G2 were disappointing.
Yeah, okay. I can give you that.
Which is why I have a hard time judging them.
As
I
disappointing
like-
as 100 Thieves, because that was.
Oh no, but no.
Yeah, that was a rough one too, but at least, yeah, I don't know. It's tough. It's tough.
Okay.
I just feel like if we look at the entirety of playoffs, I was more convinced by C9 than by Rogue.
Yeah, I can give you that, and I think I would, without putting my Euphoria hat on, I would agree with you. I think C9, especially with Berserker just being how good Berserker is right now, I think they can definitely I think they'll get to quarterfinals. Maybe they'll take a couple of games in quarterfinals, and I think that will be all that an EU team does as well. Gen G is my pick to win Worlds this year. It's going back to LCK for a little bit, so I do think the LPL teams look really strong, but I just think Gen G are going to edge it, and I can't really give you much logic for that because I think they're all very close in terms of like who is better than whom, and it's hard to judge before we actually see each region play each other, right? So,
Well, everyone, you heard it from Medic. Gen G are going to be the world champions right now. That is
Actually, Rogue.
all. Gen G and Rogue. That is all from us on this episode of Recall. Reminder that play-ins starts September 29th. Be sure that you are there. North American viewers, you have zero excuses because Worlds is in NA this year. I'm super stoked for it. We hope to see you next time on our next episode. But until then, enjoy all of the competitive League of Legends. Let's get hype!